Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've tried to listen closely. Mr. Moore, I've enjoyed meeting with you many times. Would you tell me what you think the policy of the United States is today regarding trade?
Well, you know, we've been the kind of leader in the free trade movement that Brian Riley was just talking about for 30 years. And this has been something that, you know, I mean, almost all economists agree that a great period of prosperity all around the world that began in the early 1980s through, you know, around 2007, a 25-year period, moved, you know, literally 1 billion people out of abject poverty. So it's probably one of the great anti-poverty programs of all time is free trade. Trump has challenged the kind of orthodoxy that we've lived by here in the United States for the last 25 years. In some ways, I think, in a productive way, in some ways in an unproductive way. Trump believes that all these other countries are not playing by the rules, and in some ways he's right about that, as I was telling the chairman. As you look at the data, there's a very good analysis of this, by the way, I would recommend to all of you in the President's Council of Economic Advisors report on trade that shows a lot of these countries just aren't playing by the rules. And the question is, how do you get them to play by the rules? And I'll just summarize this by saying in the last 25 years, we've used the carrot of free trade agreements to try to reduce tariffs, and that, on balance, I would say has been a positive thing. Trump is using this kind of club of threatened tariffs to try to get countries to behave and play by the rules. And we will see. I mean, the jury is still out as to whether that will work. I was saying in my statement that I think so far, I think we're making some progress here. I think we've made some progress in Mexico. I think we made some progress with the Europeans. And the big fight to come, I mean, this is the big fight of our time, will be whether or not Donald Trump can get China to start playing by the rules. They cheat, they steal, they steal $300 billion a year of our technology, our intellectual property. I mean, Senator, you're from Washington State, where you have an incredible technology industry. A lot of that stuff that is being, you know, produced by our great minds and talents is being stolen by the Chinese. So we need to get China to behave, and he's going to use these threatened tariffs to try to make that a reality.
Not to cut you. Make it a shorter answer.
Sorry.
No, I want you to respond to this kind of synthesis I'm going to do. We've gone from having a clear and understandable trade policy to not having a clear and understanding trade policy. Is that fair to say? U.S. trade policy used to be predictable, and now it's not. I
think we are in a. I think that's absolutely right. I think we're in a period where people are still trying to figure out what the trade policy is in this administration. And has to be clearer about what the goals are. But I know this, that, you know, he believes, and he believes that the workers in some of these states, like Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Iowa, those Midwestern states, I'm a Midwesterner, have been hurt by some of these trade policies. Now, I don't always agree with them, but you talk to workers in those states, I guarantee you, I was on the campaign trail. A lot of those workers in those states believe their factories are not there because of China or because of Mexico or other countries, and we better figure out, you know, and this is sort of your job as the policymakers, to figure out how we have a trade policy where all Americans benefit.
Well, let me say this. I have been vocally in opposition to the trade policy since the president announced it. I got concerned when they dropped TPP. That really knocked me off for a loop. I was a big supporter of TPP. And then we started talking about getting out of NAFTA. I'm from a 21% agricultural state in Georgia, and that's a big-time problem for us. And agricultural states are the ones that were really killed in competitive trade or tariff between countries. So it concerns me that we don't have a known commodity in terms of what is our trade policy. 2, we have an environment that's at best uncertain. And 3, it is beginning to show its evidence in the marketplace. And I'm going to be quick, Mr. Chairman, but I want to make this point. I was with a friend of mine on Labor Day 2 days ago, and the family was going to buy a boat for next year. They bought a new lake house, and they were talking about the boat they were going to buy. And they found it last weekend and came back up this weekend to the lake to make the deal. They went to the dealership, and the boat was $500 more than it was the week before. It's not a big boat, but it was $500 is $500. And the guy told me, he said, I asked the boat dealer, I said, why is the price going up? He said, well, actually, the boat's on sale versus what it was 2 weeks ago. The problem is our cost has gone up so much, we're having to raise the price that much more because of the tariff situation in Washington. And this is the aluminum and steel component on boats and yachts and things like that. But my point is we are beginning to see the effects of a trade policy that is at best not clear and unsettling and uncertain vis-a-vis what America has been. And I think that's a mistake for us. And I think the quicker we get to a place where a panel like the five of you, before anybody can say, well, U.S. trade policy today is X and it ought to be Y, then we could be in a lot better shape than everybody speculating on what it really is or what it really should be. So I just wanted to make that point, and I think it's beginning to have an effect, Mr. Chairman.